surely if 4 wheels are good, then 6 are better. Panther Westwind, makers of the Panther 6, obviously thought so when they produced this crazy car in 1977 to an astonished reaction. How did its owner, a retired clothing company manager, find himself launching a luxury Grand Tourer with 4 front wheels at the London Motor Fair in 1977, and what became of it? This is the Panther 6 story. Robert Jankel ran a textile business for many years, but his true love was tinkering with cars. Before the fashion industry, he tried running a tuning firm without much success. But the desire to make cars never went away, so when he had an opportunity to sell his stake in the clothing business in 1971, he grabbed it with both hands. He'd been building his own custom cars in his spare time, and with increasing interest from others to buy them, he decided to plough the £7,000 from the clothing business sale plus a £13,000 second mortgage and overdraft into his true passion, making cars. That's just £20,000 or around £285,000 today, not a great deal to start a custom car business. But it was enough, and with Robert's passion for cars, the company would blossom. His first would be the Panther J72, named as an homage to Jaguar. Robert Jankel had done a deal to get components from Jaguar after proving to them his passion for making custom cars. He'd previously bought Jaguar E-Types just to scavenge parts from them. The J72 would use the underpinnings and engine from the Jaguar XJ, launched just 3 years earlier, that gave it great handling. But the design harkened back to the 1936 Jaguar SS100, satisfying a nostalgia older buyers had for cars of their youth, while giving them modern handling and reliability. The next model in 1974 would also harken back to a car of old, the 1927 Bugatti Royale. The new car, dubbed the Panther DeVille, would use its own chassis for the first time, with donor parts including the engine coming once more from Jaguar. One exception were the doors, borrowed from an Austin 1800. Double the price of a Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, the car was lavish and intended for the nouveau riche, with hand-painted exterior and modern conveniences such as a built-in TV and a drinks cabinet. When not making outlandish cars for the rich and famous, workers paid the bills by doing contract work for other car makers. But they found time to produce additional models such as the FF, or Felber Ferrari. It was based on the Ferrari 330 GTC and used a Ferrari engine, but the model wasn't popular and just 7 of them were built. That same year, Panther were approached by a Canadian businessman to produce a special car as a present for his wife. Now, this should come as a warning message to everyone listening. Never make a major purchasing decision without consulting your significant other. In particular, never decide to get a custom car produced for someone else to your exact specifications without first stopping and thinking if this really is a good idea. Thankfully, for all our enjoyment, in this case, he didn't. And as a warning to us all, Panther produced, to his exact specification, this, the Panther Laser. Is it cool? Yes, if you're a teenager who's just in wacky races. Is it an appropriate present to give to your wife when she's had no input into the design at all? Absolutely not. No wonder then that the gift went down like a sausage roll at a bar mitzvah. It was sent back to the Panther's UK factory, where it languished, only to be purchased by the Crown Prince of Iran, who was, of course, a teenage boy who thought it was fantastic. After the Iranian Revolution, there was a decided lack of need for a dune racer, so it got shoved into the National Car Museum, presumably as a warning against the excesses of Western decadence and present buying. With the oil crisis making excessive boat-like cars unfashionable, Robert Jankel felt Rolls-Royce customers would be trading down to something smaller. The answer, as far as he was concerned, was the Panther Rio. They sold the car as being finished to Rolls-Royce standards, but underneath it was based on a Triumph Dolomite. This allowed the Rio to get to 115 miles an hour with a sub 9 second 0 to 60 time, yet it featured leather, walnut and a hand-beaten, rust-immune aluminium skin. But this was little more than a fancy Triumph Dolomite with the equivalent retail price today of £70,000. That was more than a Jaguar XJ that had an equal level of luxury and a network of dealers in case anything went wrong. There was talk of an order for 100 of them when the Rio launched, but in the end just 38 were produced. Panther beat a hasty retreat from this costly mistake and went back to what they knew, retro-styled roadsters like the 1976 Panther Lima. It was built using parts from the Vauxhall Viva and Magnum, including the engine, but saved weight by using a fiberglass body. With the end of Magnum production in 1978, Panther switched to building the Panther Lima chassis themselves and relaunched it with an uprated 178 horsepower turbocharged engine capable of getting the car to 60 in under 6 seconds. This ended up as Panther's most successful model, going on to sell 897 cars and allowed the Panther workforce to grow to 200 people. Formula One is a hotbed of innovation. Any change that can give a team a small advantage on the track is hotly pursued. Ken Tyrrell ran the Tyrrell team, the forerunner of the Mercedes team, and in 1975 he unveiled his team's latest innovation, the six-wheeled car. The goal wasn't to increase the contact patch of the front tyres, but rather to make the front wheels small enough that they could fit behind the front wing, so reducing drag. It also allowed for more powerful front braking. The car was introduced in 1976 and was indeed faster on the straights due to lower drag, but it handled badly through the corners. It did manage one win though at the Swedish Grand Prix. At the same time, Robert Jankel and his management team were looking to the future, and the need for a DeVille replacement became apparent. This car was always a fashion statement for the Glitterati, and it was quickly going out of style. The latest audacious cars to buy were Lamborghinis, Ferraris and Porsches. The Tyrrell design had fired Jankel's imagination. Could they build a six-wheeled road-going car to wow their customers? Work began in secrecy in a separate workshop. The car used a custom-built chassis, and it immediately became clear that this was going to be a large car. Front suspension would come from Vauxhall, which was also used on the Lima, and rear suspension from the Cadillac Eldorado. The car was planned to hit the supercar-like speed of 200 miles an hour, so Jankel picked the largest engine he could find, the 8.2 litre Cadillac V8. With the engine being designed for front-wheel drive and the six-wheeler having a complicated customised steering setup, the engine drove the rear wheels from the back of the car. With this car being a 1,300 kilogram boat of a car, nearly 5 metres long despite only having 2 seats, and wider than a Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow at over 2 metres, the car needed more power and got it through a couple of beefy turbochargers that Panther claimed boosted the V8's 365 horsepower to 600 horsepower. This wasn't a car going for subtlety. The plan was to use small front wheels like on the Tyrrell, but it was quickly discovered 10-inch wheels like those found on the Mini wouldn't last long at 200 miles an hour. So in the end, 13-inch wheels were used and Pirelli supplied specially made tyres. This meant the front and rear used different sized tyres, so the car actually needed 2 spare tyres. Styling would come from Wayne Cherry from Vauxhall and Jeff Lawson. Both would go on to greatness, Wayne becoming VP of Design at General Motors and Jeff heading up Jaguar's design efforts in the 1990s, including the XJ220. But in the 1970s they both found themselves styling Panther's new creation. The car got the droop snout nose that Wayne Cherry was becoming known for. Power steering from Cadillac would make it easy to drive, and with Panther hoping to sell the car in the Middle East, it would include an air conditioning unit from a Mack truck, despite being an open top. Telephones were in the armrests, the door had cubbies with combination locks, and naturally a TV was mounted in the dashboard. But why did a passenger car need 6 wheels? It had clear aerodynamic advantages on the racetrack, but these didn't transfer to the road. Panther pitched it as a safety move. When wet, the first wheels would lock up and clear a path for the next set. Not an entirely convincing argument, especially with ABS systems being around since the 1950s. But cars like this were pure theatre rather than anything practical, and there are always people who want these kind of extravagances. The Panther 6 was launched at the 1977 London Motor Fair, where it stole the show with a price of £40,000. That's £250,000 today. By the end of the show, Panther announced 15 orders and production would start the following year. But as Robert Jankel drove it home, he knew a lot of work had to be done. The suspension seemed to have a life of its own and the car kept threatening to stop. 1978 came and went, with production difficulties and money worries pushing the release back. By 1979, the second fuel crisis was all too much for the small company and Panther went bankrupt. The remains of the company were bought by a Korean investor who would release the new version of the Lima as the Calista in 1982 using Ford mechanicals. With SsangYong buying Panther in 1987, production would continue until the early 1990s. Panther worked on a new car, the Solo, that was launched in 1989. Designed as a replacement for the Calista, it was a more modern two-seater mid-engine sports car using the engine from a Ford Fiesta XR2. Unfortunately, it looked too similar to the much cheaper Mark II Toyota MR2 released the same year, so the car was reworked to turn it into a 2+2 with a larger Ford Sierra Cosworth engine and four-wheel drive. But with slow sales, SsangYong closed the door in the early 1990s. Back in the 1970s, Robert Jankel had kept Panther ticking over with outside work customising existing cars, and this work had been run through a separate company. After Panther's bankruptcy, Robert left to run this business full-time, producing special versions of cars like the Range Rover and Rolls-Royce Silver Spur for wealthy customers. The company's still going today and specialises in armoured vehicles. Robert Jankel bought the Panther name back from SsangYong in 2001 and had hopes to produce a new Panther, the J99. His life was tragically cut short in 2005 before his dream was realised, but a partial completed model still exists. As for his six-wheeled creation, after Panther's bankruptcy, the one prototype was sold and parts for a second car were also bought during the bankruptcy proceedings and were used to produce a second car. The Panther 6 is a fitting tribute to Robert Jankel and everyone at Panther who decided to follow their passion and do a job that they loved, creating new and wonderful creations and having a lot of fun in the process. If you're wondering why the strange background, it's because Big Car is on the road, but I'll be back to the normal background soon. Satisfying a nostalgia older buyers had for cars. With the oil crisis making excessive boat-like cars unfashionable, Robert Jankel felt Rolls-Royce. Yet it featured leather, walnut and hand-beaten rusty maroon. The six-wheeled car. The Tyrrell design had fired Jankel's imagination. Could they build a six-wheeled road-going tar? The Tyrrell design had fired Jankel. But why did a passenger path, producing special versions of cars like the Rolls-Royce Silver Spur and Range Rovers for